Today we're going to be ranking every fight in Korra and putting them on a tier list to see which is the best out of all of them. I picked the fights I thought were most interesting and significant, so let's get into it. Alright, first up we've got Team Avatar versus the Wolf Bats. I love pro bending. I think it's one of the coolest things that they added to Korra, and I thought it was really cool how they kind of overcame the cheating. Like the Wolf Bats had paid off the refs, and it was obviously in the Wolf Bats' favor, and so the Fire Ferrets had to win fairly even though they were being fought against unfairly. So I thought that was super cool to see like how they fought against that. Also the Korra and Mako comeback where she throws him back up is sick. And then the tiebreaker where Korra and Tano fight one-on-one, that's also epic because she just takes him out instantly. I love all the pro bending fights, but this is definitely the best one. I think I'll put it in A tier. Next up we've got Korra versus Tarlock where we learn that he can bloodbend. It's cool to see that bloodbending is still as strong as it used to be and that there are still bloodbenders in the world. I wonder if like Tarlock and Amon's dad had some sort of connection to Hama, because she had a really unique situation where she learned it. Like she only learned it because she was in prison. And I wonder if Yakone had the same type of experience or if he knew Hama or something. But yeah, probably not because a lot of time passed and she was really old, but maybe. But yeah, I like this fight a lot. Korra uses that wall really cool when she pushes him against it. And I just like the storyline of this, how Tarlock is Amon's brother. And so it kind of like explains Amon's powers before you even know it. I think top of B tier, because I don't think it's quite as good as the pro bending fight, but it is really good. Next up we got the airbending kids versus the Equalists. I don't think this fight is that great. It's like fun because they're just little kids fighting against adults, but it's not very good and it's pretty short. And the kids take out all the opponents way easier than they should. Like Janora swipes away the lieutenant with one air blast when like Korra had a hard time against him. So I think that was just really weird. So I think I'll leave this D tier. Like it's fine. Or no, if it's fine, I guess it's C tier. But it's like, it's not good. It's just alright. Next up, we've got Iroh fighting the planes. I think this is one of the most underrated and best fights. Definitely in season 1, but maybe in the whole show. This is one of Iroh's only fights, and there was like a curiosity about how good he is since he's named after Iroh. And it just shows off his skills really well with him flying around and taking out like multiple planes and using lightning and stuff like that. I think this is just a really cool fight. I think it's also A tier, probably just below the Wolf Bats fight. Next up, we've got Korra versus Amon, the final battle of season 1. This really just shows how scary Amon really is. Like, he's possibly the strongest villain that we've ever seen in the Avatar world up to this point, because bloodbending is just extremely powerful and he can do it without even really moving. Like, I bet against Ozai, he would have a good chance against him, probably would even beat him. And it also really ties the story together well with how Tarlock was his brother and stuff like that. And then he takes away Korra's bending and he almost takes away Mako's bending. And then he tries to make his escape, but Korra unlocks airbending and like blows him out of the window and reveals his identity. I think that they just ended this season really well. I feel like it's more story driven than it is action driven, so I don't think it's the best fight. But also the airbending kids scene before that where they have them like chained up, that's pretty intense. I think I'll put it A tier just because how like high stakes it is. Next up we've got Wan versus Vaatu. This has a super cool art style. I love these episodes. They're definitely the best in the whole season because I don't really like season 2, but they might even be the best of the whole show. It shows the origins of how the Avatar was made, and it ties everything together really well, and like it makes you nostalgic from the original show. Like it just shows the origins of so many things, like when Wan traps Vaatu in the ball that Aang used against Ozai. This fight specifically, it's pretty good. It's not like super crazy, but it is really nice. I think also A tier. Maybe right above the Amon one. Actually, no, I'm going to put this S tier because it's definitely better than like the pro bending fights. Next up, Korra versus Vaatu. I'm just going to put this D tier instantly. It's bad. It's just so weird. It's not like an Avatar fight at all. It reminds me more of like Dragon Ball Z or something where they just have giant energy blasts and cool explosions and stuff like that. I feel like that's not really what Avatar and Korra are about. And then they also have like these giant Megazoid things. I feel like that bigger does not equal cooler and better. It's just not a good fight, especially maybe in another show it's fine if that's what you're expecting, but when you're expecting something with like strategic battles and cool uses of bending and then you just get these big energy blasts, it's not fun to watch at all. And then also Janora comes out of nowhere and like somehow just gives Rava back to Korra. It has no logic behind it. It's just like an instant win, which I think is dumb. And next up, we have the Pali prison fight where they break her out. It's cool to see another combustion bender. I really like how they go back and like they don't just abandon the storylines from Avatar. They still keep blood bending in it, and combustion bending, metal bending and stuff like that. So I'm really glad that they had another combustion bender in this show. This fight shows how strong the Red Lotus is because they fight against like Zuko and Tarlock and the Eska and Desna. Like they have a really pretty stacked team fighting against them, and then they still just get destroyed. I think this is probably bottom of A tier. Maybe I might move it down top of B tier later. Next up we have Kaya versus Zahir. I love this fight. Kaya is like super underrated, I feel like. She does really well against Zahir. I'm kind of confused how Zahir got so good so fast, but he's already like a master airbender pretty much as soon as he gets it. But Kaya does really well against him and nearly beats him, but then gets beat up pretty bad at the end. Kaya, her waterbending is super cool. She uses it in one of the most unique ways. I really like this fight. A lot of people probably won't share this opinion, but I think it's probably just around middle of A tier. Next up we have the Misty Palms fight with Ghazan, Bolin, Minghua, and Mako. It shows again how strong the Red Lotus is, and like nothing Bolin and Mako can even fight against them. They just get destroyed. It's also high stakes because they have to protect Korra, and like if Ghazan gets away, then he'll probably capture her, and then they have the Avatar. Yeah, so I like this fight. It's really scary. They're just super good and way overpowered. I do think this is probably A tier, probably right below this. Right, next up we have Tenzin versus Zahir. It's cool to see Tenzin still beat Zahir because he is like a much more experienced airbender, and I'm glad they didn't just make Zahir super overpowered. Like he does technically win against him in a one-on-one, but then Minghua and Ghazan join in, and then they just beat the shit out of Tenzin, which is really sad to watch, but like Tenzin does really well against Zahir, and I like this fight. It's not super crazy though, because it's just an airbending fight. I think I'll put it top of B, because it is really sad at the end when he just gets destroyed. Next up we have the big fight with Korra, Zahir, Pali, and the metal benders. I like Tarlock's use of waterbending in it. It's really cool. It kind of reminds me of season 2 of Avatar with this and the Tenzin fight, because it just ends on a lot of sad notes, similarly to how season 2 does of Avatar. And Pali's death is really cool. I like that more than the original Combustion Man death. And then Zahir also unlocks flight at the end, which is super cool. And he only does it right after Pali dies, so I'm pretty sure it's somehow connected to what Aang does when he has to let go of Katara and like do that 8th chakra thing or whatever. But yeah, this just draws a lot of parallels to season 2, and I think that's really cool. Probably another S tier fight. Next up we have Korra versus Zahir, the final fight. This is definitely S tier. It's above both of these. And this fight reminded me a lot of Ozai versus Aang in season 3. It's really similar to that. They even fight in a similar place. I feel like it's that, but just done a little worse. It's still really cool though. But then they also have the tornado at the end that kind of just interrupts the fight, and I don't love that either. Ozai versus Aang is just so good that even a copy of it is going to be really good too. Now we've got Korra versus Kuvira, the first battle. Korra just gets destroyed, and it shows how strong Kuvira is, and it makes her really scary. And then she's also saved by the airbenders at the end. This fight's not great. I feel like it's kind of just C tier. Or no, I think it is bottom of B tier. Next up we have Su Yin versus Kuvira. I didn't realize this, but like I was surprised at how good this fight actually is. Su Yin does super well against Kuvira and uses metal bending in a really cool way. Like season 4 is not good. This is definitely, I think, the best fight of the season. And it's also cool to see Toph kind of save them at the end and have like one last victory, because it just felt like we hadn't really seen Toph do really something cool with earthbending. I think this is top of A tier. I really like this fight. Like, I didn't even think it was that cool, but then I rewatched it for this video, and it just really surprised me with how good it was. Now we've got Kuvira versus Korra, the fight in the cockpit. It's cool how they use the environment around them. It's not super great though. It's kind of boring. It's like really short, and it's cut short by the explosion of the mecha suit. I didn't like the mecha suit at all either. It felt like season 2. But yeah, this fight's not very good. It's like same level as this. Probably a little bit better though, because it's just has more animation behind it and stuff like that. Next up we've got Mako and Bolin in the power core. I feel like it took a lot of inspiration from the last Agni Kai with the style of it, like how everything is really vivid and the colors are kind of different than most fights. Like they made this super purple. and Mako is like willing to sacrifice himself to save the rest of his friends. This is definitely better than this other fight. It's not a super big fight. I think it's right around here, the lower end of A tier. Alright, so that's the end of the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to sneak into that like button's house and move all their clocks 3 hours forward so they think they're late the next morning. Make sure to hold that subscribe button's family for ransom, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.